Okay, I am now going to talk a little bit about ions. And so, to begin with, probably the easiest, kind of start off with a definition. And what ions are charged particles. So, when we say charged, what do we mean? Well, we mean that they either have a positive charge or a negative charge. So, for these two options, how do we end up there? So for something to have a positive charge, there have to be more protons than electrons. And for something, or another way to think of it is fewer electrons than protons. So for a negative charge, it's the exact opposite. More electrons than protons, or fewer protons than electrons. So we'll kind of look at a few examples. So we'll start with something that's not an ion, helium. And part of the reason it's not an ion is it's very stable having. So we look it up on the periodic table. We see that it has 2 protons and 2 neutrons. So that's kind of what makes it helium. And then also, because it doesn't, so for helium to not have any charges, it needs to have 2 electrons. So you've got 2 positive charges and 2 negative charges. And what happens is they essentially cancel each other out. So it's like, if you just think of the charges by themselves, you've got a +2 and -2. So when you add them together, +2 plus -2 is equal to 2 minus 2, which is equal to 0. So, in general, for every atom, for every element on the periodic table, kind of the default is that number of protons equals number of electrons. So if we look at the periodic table and we look at, we'll just pick, we can randomly just pick something, but we'll say fluorine. So fluorine, atomic number of 9, so we've got 9 protons. So when fluorine is neutral, you also have 9 electrons. So you've got 9 minus 9 equals 0. But fluorine is special in that fluorine likes to, and we'll learn more about this later on, but fluorine likes to pick up an extra electron. So what you get is fluoride. And this "ide" we're going to see is kind of when we write out and when we talk about chemicals, how we identify that something's an ion. But fluoride, you write F with a negative. And remember earlier, anything in this top right corner indicates our charge. And there's only one there, so that means it has a -1 charge. So to get -1, because fluorine, which it's based off of, still has 9 protons. But in order to get a -1, we need one more electron. So fluoride is 10 electrons. And that's what we'll see as we kind of look at different ions, is that you have a certain number of protons and you have some extra ions. So sometimes, like for things on the right side, like fluoride, chloride, bromide, you'll have an extra electron. Something like oxide, sulfide, extra 2. For things on the left side, like a lithium ion, that'll be a +1, and so you'll have fewer electrons. And we'll talk more about that in future lessons.